the number one thing that I saw from Devin Booker that shows you maturity and growth and shows you he's a superstar is he realizes now that he does not need to score the basketball to have a dramatic impact on the game. And I think his ability to move the ball, his absolute dedication to rebounding is impressive. His defense last night, I thought, was something nobody talked about. But his defense at the top of the key, especially on Khris Middleton when he was on Middleton, was really good, especially early in the game. Now, Middleton got hot in the second half. But I think the Phoenix Suns were well in control of this game in the third quarter, and I think Devin Booker had a big part in that.
Yeah, he did. I mean, I again, last night was a prime example of how successful teams in the NBA have their two best players and everybody else, and those two guys are going to work together to carry the load, and they're going to try and get other guys involved to get some balance offensively. But it's going to be those two guys carrying the team, and I think that. So often all the credit, right now seems to go to Chris Paul. But if you look at the numbers suggest that Chris Paul and Devin Booker essentially had the same game. Was Chris Paul more efficient? Sure, Chris Paul was more efficient. Yeah, he shot a better percentage. You can give him that card, but I think that overall, they're both right around that 30-point mark in the game, and both of them are distributing, rebounding, and doing what needs to be done. Now, I thought what was a really crucial adjustment by Monty Williams rolling out in Game 1 was making sure there was never a time when Devin Booker and Chris Paul were both off the floor. And I think that was one of the best things that he could have done because I think last night in small spurts, nothing major, but in small spurts, there were times where the second unit of the Phoenix Suns didn't exactly play great basketball, which allowed the Bucks to kind of, creep back a little bit. So I just think that last night the Suns handled their business. Devin Booker, he did exactly what you would expect him to do. I really appreciate the fact that he made it a point to drive to the basket. I think, in the Clippers series, there were a few times where he wasn't driving, he wasn't making that a priority, and that kind of hurt him a little bit. That kind of took him off his game, which is what ends up getting him in foul trouble and just in a situation that he doesn't want to be in. So, yeah, they took care of business last night. It was the first game. I just think they did what they were supposed to do, and it's as simple as that. And I think this is going to be, I really do think this is going to be a long series. To your point yesterday, you said that on the show.
Yeah, I don't see any way this is a sweep, and it's something that a lot of Suns fans are this idiotic, moronic, stupid Suns in 4. Stop. You're celebrating violence when you do Suns in 4, and I know it's chic and cool, and I'm old and fat, and I'm just not fun. Okay, cool. Celebrating, Suns in 4 guy, like Douche Canoe City. Mm-hmm. Douche Canoe, his picture's right next to that. Mm-hmm. Anyway, the point is, I just think that the Suns in 4 talk, I think is kind of foolish. I think the Suns are the better basketball team. I think the most compelling story in the NBA Finals is Giannis's knee. And that chase down block and all that, I agree with you. I agree with everybody that was saying, hey, that was a great moment, but this is not the same Giannis Antetokounmpo that we're used to. The numbers bear that out. I think around the basket, he lacked explosiveness. He was not the even though I think he got 18 rebounds, he was not the rebounder that we have become used to. I think everything was a little slower and a little more methodical for Giannis, and I think he's going to have to dramatically improve his mobility. Especially on the offensive end. We didn't see those crazy runs to the basket, and he's trying to lower the shoulder and bowl people over, cost him an offensive foul, and I'll be surprised if the Suns don't exploit that more.
Where's the spin move last night?
Yeah, well, you know what, and I think it's awfully difficult to do that when you're dealing with a sprained knee, a hyperextended sprained knee. It's difficult to have, push off that left leg when you, a week ago today, almost broke that leg in half. I think you're asking a lot. I think it was a really gutty performance. I think it's a miracle that he's even on the floor. I think they need him, and I think they need him to play 40 minutes.
Yeah,
that's what they need. I think they need him to continue to shoot threes. The Suns are not going to guard him. Mm-hmm. He was 1 of 2 last night from 3. I think he needs to be 1 of 6, 1 of 5, 3 of 4.
Yeah.
You need to keep shooting that because you've got to keep the Suns honest from there.
Yeah, and I think that the other side of this whole thing with Giannis is his defense. His defense is largely predicated on the ability to recover when someone goes by him and get to that high point to block a shot. And I think that Giannis is a guy that really has made his career so far on explosiveness, on agility, athleticism, and just being, frankly, just a better athlete than you are. I mean, that's basically been his career. Whether you look at his offensive game, his defensive game, he's not a finesse player. He is a power player that is relying on his ability to just simply out-athlete you. And I think that, injuries, as the saying goes, injuries are the great equalizer. And I think last night, Giannis has, by most people's standards, frankly, a hell of a game. Like 20 and 18 or whatever it was. But by Giannis' standards, we'd expect like 35, 40, and 18, And I think that, to me, is the biggest difference. You look at the final score of this game, they end up winning it by what, 13, I think it was, or whatever?
Yes.
So if Giannis is around 35 points, okay, we're having a pretty tight game now. So that's why I say, yeah, the Suns won game one, but they didn't. It wasn't like they blew out a 100% healthy Bucks team. So I think that as this series wears on, my first question, I think everybody's first question, is going to be, what is the status of his knee? Because again, think about it. He had a chance to rehab just to barely make it to game one. I mean, you're talking about a game time decision after going through his pregame routine and all of that. He barely made game one. So then I'm sitting here saying, okay, well, you look at the final schedule, it's not like you're going to have a week off, man. So, is the swelling in that knee going to be handled? Is he going to be able to continue to play even at this level? What does that look like? That's the biggest question to me.
Well, and I think, obviously, you get better as you go home. Right now, the Milwaukee Bucks are living in a hotel. You're rehabbing in some clandestine gym that's probably 1,000 degrees. I mean, it is interesting to see exactly what is going on with Giannis's leg. But having said that, my God, Chris Paul and Devin Booker were very good last night. DeAndre Ayton, even though he had a couple of DeAndre Ayton moments where he was,
as he always does.
It's the NBA Finals. You've played an entire season, and you're still in the wrong spot on offense. Like the one play where, and I actually want to say it was Devin Booker, ran right into. I don't understand how Ayton is in the wrong spot where Devin Booker runs right into DeAndre Ayton. They blow the whistle, and Booker walks right over to him and is pointing to the corner like, hey, you got to get out of here so that I can have some space. Like the thing that scares me about a guy like DeAndre Ayton is that he just doesn't have, and this is going to sound like a big word, spatial recognition. He doesn't understand spacing the floor. Mm-hmm. He doesn't understand why him standing on the block instead of 2 feet off the block makes a difference for Devin Booker driving to the lane. Like he just doesn't, understand that concept.
Yeah.
The Bahamian behemoth has to get a little better. Okay. DeAndre Ayton has to get a little better mentally. His basketball IQ has to come up. Can he do that? Yeah. I mean, he strikes me as a guy who's probably not going to be the smartest guy in the world.
Yeah.
But this is a guy that is a pretty good basketball player. Again, last night he struggled to catch the ball on what should have been a poster of Giannis, but he didn't. I like DeAndre Ayton. I think he had a really good debut, and I think this has been a really good season for him. I think he has to be better than he was last night for them to win a championship.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think that they roll out to start the game, with him on Giannis, and my first question was just going to be, okay, I'm not surprised by this, but when Giannis starts knocking that down, what's the adjustment? Because at some point, Giannis will get a little hotter from three, and he will start making some of those. He always does, and then he gets cold again. So I'll just be curious to see, what it looks like. Frankly, the defense on Giannis I thought was pretty damn good last night. I mean, I thought Jay Crowder did a great job. I thought when Bridges was on him for a couple of possessions, he did everything that he could. I do think that losing Sarge is a bigger deal than people are making it out to be.
Yeah, was there ever an update on I
didn't see an update on it. My instincts after seeing the play, is that he did tear his ACL on that play. I really do think that that's what happened. It was a non-contact injury. He was jump stopping, really loaded up that leg. And you can tell right away, the telltale sign is a guy just basically falls over. You land, you're about to go up, and you just can't. And you fall over, writhing in pain. He barely, literally, I'm impressed by him, honestly. He got up and, walked down to the other end of the floor on one leg.
Yeah.
And then barely, pretty much couldn't walk off the floor after that. So that's why I say I do think his season's done. But I could be wrong. Again, that's just going off of what I saw.
Yeah, I think it's an important thing because now you're playing Frank Kaminsky more.
Yeah.
And that's never a good thing. And I think Dario is very limited. But, hey, he was contributing to you, and I know that Philadelphia 76ers fans last night were like, oh, Dario Saric is playing in the finals before Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. Mm-hmm. The process, bro.
I think,
which I think is kind of funny.
My only thing with Saric, though, is that he's that guy that comes in and beats up Giannis. He's got one job in life, and I think it's important to have that guy on your team.
Yeah, I think you have not a bunch. I think you have those guys. I think that it'll be interesting to see exactly how they replace Dario's minutes, if in fact this is an ACL, which it looked like to me as well. It'll be interesting to see how they replace him. I think DeAndre Ayton is going to play the bulk of those minutes. The thing that was impressive about Ayton last night, by the way, speaking of basketball IQ, he didn't get in foul trouble.
Yeah.
He didn't commit the stupid foul. And when you look at, a guy like a Torrey Craig who only played 16 minutes, 3 personal fouls. That's what you would expect out of the bench. I mean, and I just don't know. I was a little surprised Abdel Nader didn't get run last night.
Not at all.
Did not play a single minute.
Yeah.
And I thought once Sarge went out, that's actually the name that went through my head, but we didn't see that. But I think Monty Williams has done a really nice job. He has done a great job. Ace says, didn't watch a minute of the game because they took it from us. I watched the match. Okay, so
they took it from us.
This is interesting. Giggity says, good morning, fellas. Jeremy Bolton says, morning. James Knight says, drool alert. Here comes the Phoenix-Utah comparison.
Yeah.
Okay. Jeremy Bolton says, Suns are going to win in 4 or 5. Okay.
Do Suns fans just say that every series? Is that what?
Suns at 4. I'm going to go punch somebody in the face now. The idea that the Jazz had... Okay, so last night there was a lot of Twitter commotion, if that is a thing.
Twitter's been going crazy.
About, I can't watch the NBA Finals because we should have been there. Okay, what do you mean the Jazz should have been there? What does that mean, the Jazz should have been there? You lost to the LA Clippers, who then went on and lost to the Phoenix Suns, who are in the NBA Finals because they won and the Jazz and Clippers lost. So I don't know about this took it from us thing. I don't understand what that means.
It's really unfair.
But what is unfair about it? What is the injury thing? It was taken from us? I don't even understand what that means. I mean, Kawhi Leonard missed the remainder of the Jazz series with a knee injury that is still undisclosed. So what do you mean it was...
And you still lost.
Right? That's what I'm trying to figure out. I think it's one of those things where I don't understand this belief system that, the Jazz got robbed. Of what? Their dignity because of Dennis Lindsey? What are we talking about?
Yeah, I feel like Jazz fans think that the Suns are the Suns copied what the Jazz did, and the Suns are doing everything that the Jazz should have been doing, and it's like this personal thing that Jazz fans have in their head. It's like this narrative, the Suns, stole our blueprint and are doing what we should be doing, and it's like, no, dude. Your blueprint was not to draft well. The Suns actually did draft well. The Suns actually did better than you at basketball.
And they went out and got a point guard who stayed healthy most of the season, and now he got COVID, missed 2 games of the Western Conference Finals. But, I mean, let's not forget that Chris Paul and Michael Jordan are the only players with 30 points and 9 assists in their NBA Finals debut. I mean, that's why the Suns won the game.
Yeah.
Because you got a really strong performance out of guys that are healthy enough to play. And if you look at what the Suns did, they fired their medical staff 2 seasons ago. And all of a sudden, Devin Booker's hamstring injuries and quads and calves are gone. And now all of a sudden, Devin Booker's playing the bulk of the games. He's playing more minutes than anybody else in the NBA Finals. Playing 40 minutes last night, giving you big buckets. Like, you're healthy. You have your guys. Now, then again, Dario Saric, blows an E. Okay, cool, but you've got something called depth, right? There's actual other guys who are on the bench ready to play.
Yeah.
Nothing was taken from the Utah Jazz. And frankly, Clippers fans feel the exact same way. Like, oh, Joe Ingles is a dirty player. That was on Twitter yesterday. What Joe Ingles did is what any player would have done when Kawhi Leonard was running by you. You're going to bump him. And there was nothing dirty about what Joe Ingles did to Kawhi Leonard.
Yeah.
So let's just leave that right there.
Why does it piss everybody off that the Suns are good? Like, why what is it like if this was Portland, nobody would be saying anything. If this was whatever run of the mill team you want to look at, nobody would be saying anything. But I feel like because it's the Suns, people are all pissed.
Yeah, and I again laugh because I just think that people like the victim card.
Mm-hmm.
The Phoenix Suns are very good, and I think a lot of people, if Kawhi Leonard had stayed healthy, if Mike Conley, if they didn't though, that's the hard part I think for all sports fans.
Yeah.
If Jim McMahon hadn't been blown up by Charles Martin when I was a kid.
Yeah.
But he was. You can't live in ifs and buts in sports because ultimately there is one outcome, and it is usually the team that plays well and stays healthy that wins.
Yeah.
In any sport, almost in any season.
I feel like that's just an accepted fact. That's not even that's not opinion. Health is everything in sports. Look at the NFL. You look at the NFL, and 9 times out of 10, the team that wins the Super Bowl was the healthiest team. That's just how it goes. You could buy as much talent as you want to, but if that talent happens to get hurt, no one's feeling sorry for you.
Yeah, if you go and buy Tom Brady to win a Super Bowl and he gets hurt, you're not winning a Super Bowl.
And nobody's going to feel sorry for you.
No.
It is what it is.
Jeremy Bolton says, we Jazz fans are bitter because we're a loyal fan base and it's a tough pill to swallow to see the Suns in the finals, unlike the fair weather sad excuse that are Suns fans. I think Suns fans have suffered for over a decade. And I think you look at what's going on in Phoenix right now, I really don't think the fair weather sad excuse Suns fans. Do you understand this is the thing. I don't think most people understand how difficult it is to be a Suns fan. You have arguably the worst owner in the NBA now in Robert Sarver, who has put no money and no assets into winning. And he finally did. And he let basketball people do the basketballing. And all of a sudden, James Jones comes in as a general manager, and everybody ripped that hire. I remember we had James Jones on our show the day that he was hired. And he was really enthusiastic. And he pretty much said, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. And they did that. And now they're playing for an NBA championship. They're not sad excuse for a fan base. Suns fans are passionate. They're legit. They have a reason to be pissed off. But when you give them a team that is even just semi-competitive, they show up like a crazed dog. And I think that the shocking part is the Suns arena is now a home court advantage. It is loud. It is raucous. It is everything you want.
Just to give you an appreciation for where sports fans in Phoenix were last night, the Suns arena was sold out last night, right, for the NBA Finals. Just a block away at Chase Field, there were 6,800 people in the building for a baseball game. 6,800 people for a Major League Baseball game. You're talking about a stadium that we've been in at full capacity, right? For the NL wildcard game several years ago against the Rockies. They're so bad that there were 6,800 people. You're an empty ballpark. And by the way, a block away, the crappy old Suns, just some crappy team, are selling that place out. Like, out. So, I don't know. I just don't think that...
I look at it as the Diamondbacks are unwatchable.
Yeah.
And 6,800 showed up to watch a Diamondbacks game. And I don't care who's pitching. I'm not watching a Diamondbacks game. Like, I'm not. If there is, you want to talk about ownership issues? No, I'm not. Anyway, the point is, the Diamondbacks are wholly unwatchable. And 6,800 fans showed up. I actually give those 6,800 fans a lot of credit. Listen, the Suns are not lucky. They're not, everything broke right. Well, you make your own luck in the NBA. And, there's a lot of people talking about how, injuries. And, the Suns have had their injuries too. But they continue to win. They went 2-0 without Chris Paul. Is that their fault? No. Chris Paul is their second best player.
He's their first best player by a lot of people's standards.
On the way he's playing right now, he's their most impactful player. And they won 2 games against the Clippers without him, who were also without their best player. You're blaming the Suns for doing what your team didn't do. And I don't just mean the Jazz, the Nets, everybody else. Anybody else who had injuries or Ben Simmons. You're blaming the Suns for doing what your team did.
That was cold, bro. That was cold.
Well, they'd have won if he'd have gotten hurt. Yes, Giggity says 6,800 people for a game with the worst team in Major League Baseball. Exactly
Unbelievable.
Right. Jeremy Bolton says, try being a BYU, Jazz, Cubs, and Raider fan. Well, BYU's never getting over, so I totally get that. And I'm a Cubs fan, die hard.
It's not good.
Yeah, it's not good. Jeremy Bolton says, all right, my bad on the Suns fans takes, ignorant on my part. But just like you said, they've never had a home court advantage in how many years until they're good? 10 years, because they've been terrible. They've been really bad. You've had every coach who's never coached an NBA game coaching NBA games for the Suns. It's just like your owner do you understand that the owner put goats in the general manager's office who took a dump in his office to try and prove a point that you have to go and get an all-time great? Robert Sarver, look it up. Robert Sarver put goats in McDonough's office, and they crapped everywhere, and he thought that was funny. Like, that's who the owner of the Suns is. What are we doing? Are you serious? And so he gets out of the way and hands the reins to James Jones, who almost immediately trades Josh Jackson, thankfully. You go and get Chris Paul, you go and get Monty Williams, Torrey Craig has to be one of the great signings of the year.
Campaign,
you draft, to turn, anyway, do you understand how much work has been done by James Jones and Monty Williams? It is not a fluke. It is not an accident. It's hard work and preparation, incredible adjustments. I don't think people, and maybe if some, Giggity probably can back me up on this, DeAndre Ayton, up until this year, has been terrible.
Yeah.
Frustratingly bad at times.
Yes.
And just no clue on defense. No clue on defense. And all of a sudden, you go and get a guy like Chris Paul who just crawls into DeAndre Ayton's orifice and essentially says, hey, we're going to do it right, and you're not going to be here.
How the fuck else would you do this job?
And all of a sudden, DeAndre Ayton is turned into a guy that you can lob the ball to. Now, he'll catch it 7 out of 10 times, but he's a much better player. It just is. You don't have any idea how bad the Suns were. Do you understand that their practice facility is in the basement of their arena? Do you understand how awful their locker room was? The visiting locker room was just as nice as the home locker room, and the home locker room was I'm telling you, it was an outhouse. Like, it
Yeah.
was not a nice locker room.
Shoebox.
It was not a nice stadium. The practice gym, come on. Who are we kidding? And that's what the Suns were dealing with. And finally, Robert Sarver put in a bunch of money. He's building a state-of-the-art practice facility. Like, they rebuilt Suns Arena. They're doing all of this stuff. And now they're starting to win. It's not accidental that they're winning. In fact, it's very deliberate. It's hundreds of millions of dollars worth of deliberate. That's why the Suns are winning. James Jones is a better general manager than Dennis Lindsey. That's why they're winning. Because James Jones is actually drafted really well. And so they've turned those draft picks in guys like, I think actually McDonough drafted DeAndre Ayton.
Yeah.
But they overhauled the developmental staff and the scouting staff, and
They've rolled over most of the organization.
yeah, I mean, he kept almost nobody, and so you start looking at the way that this team is built, and you start looking at the guys last night that really contributed. Jay Crowder played good defense; he was terrible offensively.
1 point.
That's a really good pickup. Mikal Bridges is a really good pickup. That's their guy. They've developed him. Ayton. Devin Booker. You look at Cam Johnson. Cam Payne was left on the scrap heap of basketball, and they've turned him into a really productive, depth scoring point guard.
Who's playing with confidence, by the way. Last night, I mean, it's not like he lit it up last night, but I mean, when he was in there, he played well.
Yeah, 10 points, 2 of 5 from 3. I mean,
that's what you want out of him.
Yeah, and Cam Johnson, 10 points, 2 of 4 from 3.
It was so good for Cam Johnson to knock down that first shot. Like, he just comes right in the game, knocks it down.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's exactly what you were looking for.
And the little things that the Suns do, and not to sit here and slurp the Suns all morning, but to go 25 of 26 from the line.
Yeah.
For Devin Booker to be getting into the paint and drawing frustration fouls on Lopez, I think was really important. Those are the moments that cement you the win when Devin Booker goes 10 of 10 from the line.
Yeah.
Those are really important free throws.
Yep.
It'd be nice if he didn't go 1 of 8 from 3, but he went 10 of 10 from the line. I mean, you have all these little things that the Suns are doing. The Jazz frustratingly miss a lot of free throws in critical moments. And I mean, Donovan Mitchell all the way down the roster. Miss free throws. Can't do that. You got to go 25 of 26 when the game's on the line.
Yeah.
And I think that's why the Suns are better than the Clippers. Paul George missing critical free throws.
Yep.
Can't do that. 25 of 26 from the line. And I give the Suns a lot of credit for doing those little things. LVL 307 says, Suns were bad, truly. Drafting Josh Jackson, Marquise Khris, Bender. Oh, Dragan Bender.
Dude.
My God. Yeah, I mean, the
Alex Len.
Oh, man. Oh, man. They had...
The Eric Bledsoe days.
Where Eric Bledsoe, was lying about being in a beauty parlor when he was drafted or tweeting about how he wanted to get out of there. There were some dark days.
Yeah.
Yes. Man, Ryan McDonough at Media Day, I guess 4 years ago now. I mean.
Yeah.
Dude.
It was bad.
Not good. Really, really not good. And you start looking at, just some of their picks. In the early 2000s, I mean, DJ Strawberry, Alondo Tucker, Rudy Fernandez.
Bro.
I mean, who remembers Luol Deng, Nate Robinson, Marcin Gortat, Rajon Rondo, right? And then all of a sudden, things got a little better. TJ Warren turned into a good player. Bogdan Bogdanovic, Devin Booker, and then you went to the darkness of Georgie's Papa Giannis.
Oh.
And then when you got James Jones, I mean, that 2018, DeAndre Ayton, they did a lot of nice things with their salary cap and with getting Chris Paul. And I will still maintain that the best championship teams win it in free agency with a couple of players that they drafted and developed.
Yeah.
I think that's the blueprint.
It is.
is what it is. Will the Suns sweep the Bucks?
No, they're not going to sweep the Bucks.
I don't think so either.
I think they'll win game 2 at home. They'll go on the road, and I think, if you're the Suns, the best you can hope for is a split. And I think they're capable of doing it. They're definitely capable of splitting in Milwaukee. I have no doubt about that. It's just going to be a matter of if they actually split or if they lose both of those games and you come back to Phoenix tied. If that happens, obviously, then you're probably going 7. I think if you're able to split, then it's going to be 6, just like the last series.
Utah Home Loan says, "Are you guys based in Utah?" Yes, we're doing this show from South Jordan. Giggity, Jeremy Bolton. What the hell, goats? Yes.
Yeah, dude, that's not a fake story. That is a true story that actually happened.
Robert Sarver, the owner of the Suns, put goats in his general manager's office to try and send the message that he needed to get a goat, greatest of all time. To get a goat. He put a goat. They crapped everywhere. It was terrible. What are you talking about? Utah Home Loan says, "I want to see Donovan Mitchell force a trade out of Utah." What are you talking about?
Why?
Like, why?
Yeah, I need to know why.
Yeah, Mr. Mitch says, "Yeah, the Suns were an embarrassing joke. Don't be bitter. They turned it around more quickly than you did." Ooh. Utah Home Loan Guide says he's going to leave anyways. Might as well get max value while you can. See, I don't think that he's going to leave anyways. And I think Donovan Mitchell's a guy that wants to see change, and I think that the Jazz are catering to that.
What makes you think that he's gonna leave anyway? Because I don't even feel like we're there yet. I mean,
yeah,
like 3 seasons from now, if you haven't won anything, then yeah, that's probably more of a conversation. But right now, I mean, he's just starting out on the extension he signed.
He's not leaving.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not going to be. It's not going to be anytime in the next 3 years. I think if you win a championship in the next 3 years, which I think based on things that are going to happen this offseason, let's see what they do with Mike Conley and how much they overpay him.
Yeah.
Because I think they're going to bring him back. I mean, I'm pretty convinced. Look, I feel pretty strongly the right thing to do is to not have Mike Conley on this roster next year.
Right.
I mean, you're going to pay the luxury tax dollar for dollar to bring him back. And I know it is very difficult to replace a guy of Mike Conley's caliber, but he is proven to be unreliable.
And he will every single time.
And if you bring him back, you're going to have to make a tough decision. Are you going to trade a guy? And the other thing is, I spent a lot of time looking at the cap last night, and I still maintain for the Jazz that the Derek Favors, Rudy Gobert contracts are the two that are really going to hold you up. I mean, there's real value in Jordan Clarkson, but do you really want to trade Jordan Clarkson? I mean, I think that's a guy that serves a pretty succinct role on this team. Your job is to come in, take the basketball, and put it in the bucket.
Yeah.
And he does that.
At a high level.
At home. Now, he tends to struggle on the road shooting threes, but he does that at a very high level. I think Bojan Bogdanovic, I'm not married to any of these guys, frankly. Like, Bojan Bogdanovic's contract probably has the most value.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, I don't.
For better or for worse, the cap situation is straightforward, right?
It is.
Like you don't have.
It is.
This is not a. This is not a conversation around like, hey, well, what are all the possibilities? We're in a great place. We got all this flexibility. Like, we got picks. Like, what are we going to do here? That's not where you are. Like,
and yeah, I mean, that's just not. That's not the way you go about things, Karen.
Yeah.
See, no, that's just not the way to go here, Karen.
No, Karen, it's not. I just think it's you can't. I mean, it's very difficult to do what the Jazz want to do, and. Again, with Mike Conley yesterday on YouTube, all the comments. So sign and trade. Sign and trade.
How?
Okay. So if you're somebody that's a proponent of signing and trading Mike Conley, ask yourself who's going to do that.
And why?
Because Mike Conley's going to want a lot of money, and he's going to want to go to a contender. Is Mike Conley going to be a guy that a sign and trade for the Jazz to, again, the Lakers seem to be the hot flavor on Mike Conley right now. Are you going to do a sign and trade with the LA Lakers? What are you going to get in return? Are you going to try and trade? And by the way, if it's 12 $25 million a year? Like, what is the asset on the LA Lakers that you want? Like, are you thinking Kyle Kuzma? Like, I don't know that Kyle Kuzma even helps you.
If I'm signing and trading Mike Conley to the Lakers, I definitely want Talon Horton-Tucker, number one.
Well, he's a free agent, though.
They didn't re-sign him yet?
No.
Oh, well.
Talon Horton-Tucker is a free agent. I mean, if you look at some of the
Then
numbers,
I'd be trying to sign him. Then I thought he was with the Lakers, but obviously I'm wrong.
He's a free agent and he's going to be in demand.
Yeah.
You look at the guys that are under contract to them, like Montrezl Harrell. That's a guy that probably helps you here. But if you look at Kyle Kuzma, are you paying Kyle Kuzma $13 million? I don't know that I'm willing to do that. I mean, let's play with a number of $20 million. How are you going to get to $20 million? Kyle Kuzma, Montrezl Harrell?
I think people forget that when you do trades, the money has to match.
Well, and you can't go – the money almost has to match perfectly because the Jazz are hard capped.
Yeah.
So and the other thing is Mike Conley's not going to Memphis. He's not going to Orlando. He's not going to, just average crappy team in the NBA.
Doesn't this feel like a thing where, like, in life, like when you really want something, but, to get that done, like buying a new car as an example, just as an arbitrary example, like, you really want to buy this new car, but you can't really, you really have to stretch yourself to make the down payment and to make the monthly work. It's like, man, like I really probably shouldn't do this, but I really want this car. That's like the Mike Conley situation. Oh, we really want to bring Mike Conley back, but our cap is so jacked that, we're not going to be able to compete with the other offers that are going to be offered to him. Like that's why I'm a proponent of letting him walk. Like it almost has nothing to do with his ability when he's on the floor. Because again, obviously the injury thing is such a caveat with Mike Conley. Like I don't doubt the guy's ability on the floor. When he's on the floor, Rudy Gobert is a better player. There's no question about that. But I'm not willing to continue to just bulldoze my way deeper into the hole that is this cap. That's just not smart. I mean, that's what you've been doing for, however long. What has it been? 10 years that Dennis Lindsey has had full control of everything. He's been with the organization for like 12. So I just don't think that it's a smart move to continue to go that direction. That direction is why you're sitting at home right now, to be completely honest with you. The Jazz need to do a 180 and let him walk and find some options, in free agency.
Yeah, I mean, we can go round and round on this. I'm telling you right now, are you really going to trade Mike Conley to make the Lakers a championship contender?
No.
YouTube yesterday, there were a couple of things saying trade him for Reggie Jackson, who's also a free agent, by the way. And I want to say the Clippers have early bird rights on that. I'm just telling you that the sign and trade options are very, very limited. I mean, it truly is threading the needle for a sign and trade. You would have to find the perfect situation because you are so landlocked by the cap.
Yeah.
It just makes it very difficult. Jeremy Bolton says, and yes, Jake, you're 100% right. The injuries are brutal from Conley. You can't keep it.
You're just not in a position. I just don't feel like there are some organizations who are in a position to take risks with injury-prone players. You're not one of them, And again, I just think that you can't have pride about this whole thing. It shouldn't be, and it so often is when we have this conversation, a thing where it's like, oh man, that's so disrespectful to say that Mike Conley's hurt and that's why we shouldn't pay him. Why is that such a negative thing? Like, the guy is an injury-prone player. It's just who he is. Like, why can't we just accept that and say, hey, we're negative $20 million on this cap. We're paying luxury tax. The question is, are we paying $20 million worth of luxury tax, or are we paying $1 million worth of luxury tax? And my feeling is Ryan Smith is probably more willing to pay luxury tax than, the Millers were. But at the same time, he doesn't want to be paying $20 million. So that's why I think
it's bad business.
Like, they will offer him something, But they're not going to offer him 25 a year. I would think that they'd offer him like 18.
And they're not going to negotiate against themselves.
Yeah.
I think, and the dangerous thing here is, do you go to Mike Conley and say, hey, here's a 2-year, $36 million deal? The number that is in my head is 18 to 20 million.
Yeah.
If it's 20 million and a penny, you can't do it. The deal, the only way it's palatable at all is, hey, it's a 2-year deal. The second year is not guaranteed. And you can guarantee that second year by playing 90% of the team's games.
Including the postseason.
You know, like you can guarantee it through on-court performance. And I just don't know that he'll do that because somebody's going to hand him 2 years and probably $50 million.
It's insane.
I mean, there's no way to pay Mike Conley $25 million a year for the next 2 years. There's just, and yes, it is true that a Donovan, Rudy, Conley core is not bad. But who are you willing to give up to re-sign Mike Conley? Because I'm telling you now that you cannot pay $100 million to Mike Conley. You cannot do that. You can't. And I think when you look at the way that Mike Conley has performed, he's been an elite performer on the floor. But where was he in the Clippers series? And it's a big reason why you got beat the way you got beat. And that just sucks. Mm-hmm. Brandon Whiteside says, letting him walk, we could not go and get a guy with his salary. No, if you're over the cap, you are hard capped, you're a luxury taxpayer.
Right. Here's what I'm saying, though. Here's what I'm saying. If the choice is like, if your mentality is going to be, hey, we're going to pay the luxury tax, you know, and we're going to pay that on Mike, or we're going to try and, you know, do it another way, I would rather do it with a player who is not as injury prone as Mike Conley. And hey, maybe that player's performance is not at Conley's level, like, you know, when they're both 100%. But I'm telling you, for this team and what you have on this roster, if you do nothing else with the roster except let Mike walk and try to sign some lower-end players, you will be fine. I'm telling you, because adding 2 players that are point guards, ideally, or like, you know, between 1, 2, and 3s, like that, those positions on the floor, if you can do that and give Quinn some flexibility in this roster, because that's what he does not have right now, you might actually be a better team on the floor because you're giving Quinn more ways to win games.
And the thing I don't understand about this whole concept is how short-sighted it is to pay Mike Conley this kind of money. Again, I will just say, and I will pull up the number just so that we're all on the same page.
And you can find this all online.
For 2022-23, for the Utah Jazz, their salary cap, so 1 year from right now, for their salary cap, hang on, you only have Rudy Gobert, Donovan Mitchell, and essentially Bojan Bogdanovic as big numbers. Rudy will be at 38, Don will be at 30.3, Bojan will be at 19.5. And then you have Jordan Clarkson at 13.3. And then again, Derek Favors, $10 million more. Royce O'Neal at 9.2. And Azubuike at 2.1.
You notice how all these numbers for the
That's
role players on the Jazz are like 9 million, 10 million, 13
it's a lot of money.
million. You go look at, and I'm not saying like we have to do this right now, but like if you guys put time into looking at the cap, I'm telling you, go look at the Lakers cap. Go look at the Clippers cap. Go look at any of the elite teams in the league, and what you're going to see is there are 2 players on their roster that are getting paid the lion's share of the money. Okay, so about 40 to 50% of the cap. Everybody else is like 5 million, 2.5 million, like much, much, much lower, and they fill a role. And what that does is it gives your head coach way more flexibility in how they can play. And that's my biggest problem when I really boil this thing down to what the true issue with this team is they don't have as many ways to win games as the other teams in the West do. The Lakers have more ways to win games. The Clippers certainly have more ways to win games. The Suns do. I would even tell you the Nuggets do.
Yeah.
When they're good. So that's why I say I just think that you're paying guys too much money to do too little. That's the issue, where you have teams like the Lakers who are paying guys pretty much nothing to do a lot. And that's the biggest difference.
Yeah, I struggle with it. I mean, when you look at these numbers and you realize that, that the Jazz just have a lot of money out to guys like, I mean, right now, I don't know any other way but to say that Derek Favors was a mistake. That was not a great contract. That, like, Royce O'Neal's another one of these guys where you look at Royce O'Neal and everybody's like, oh, lockdown defender. Is he a lockdown defender?
Not really.
Royce O'Neal's not a lockdown defender. He is a guy that's an unwilling three-point shooter who is a good defender and a good rebounder. And I think there's value for that around the NBA. I would move him.
Yeah.
I would trade Bojan Bogdanovic's $20 million deal. I would do that. When you have 56% of your cap in two players, and one of those players gives you absolutely nothing offensively on most nights, you're going to have to make some tough decisions.
It's an issue.
I mean, you really are. But look, with all due respect to some of the takes in the comments today are ridiculous. Like Brandon Whiteside says, Conley to Dallas, unload Porzingis. So wait, you want to trade Mike Conley to the Dallas Mavericks for Kristaps Porzingis?
Why?
What, is it because he shoots threes? What
It's
is
just
it?
another injury guy.
Like, he's a guy who doesn't play games. Like, if you look at what you have to pay Kristaps Porzingis to not play for you, you're doing the exact same thing that you're doing. The guy is a max player. If I could get a stupid contract, he's going to make $31.6 million this year.
Isn't that a crazy way to say it? You're paying him not to play for you.
Do you understand with Kristaps Porzingis that if you traded him to Utah for Mike Conley, that you basically are going up probably at least $10 million in luxury tax payments? Like, in what world does that make any sense? I mean, you guys, and I love Jazz fans, don't just Damian Lillard's coming to the Jazz. How? Do you think Portland's going to do you really think, ask yourself this question. Oh yeah, Portland's going to trade Damian Lillard to the Utah Jazz, who just won the conference regular season, best record in the NBA. You really think they're going to trade Damian Lillard to the Utah Jazz? You think that's happening? And for what? What do the Jazz have in any coherent, well thought out trade package? What do the Utah Jazz have that the Portland Trailblazers would be like, oh yeah, we got to do that deal? Because they're not trading Donovan Mitchell for Damian Lillard.
I was going to say, there's only one name.
Like, you're going to go up 5-6 years in experience and age? And for a guy that has not won, right? And Damian Lillard, with all due respect, Dame time, we get it, cool. He has not won. And he's been the best player on talented teams. Not saying they've had the best rosters, but he hasn't won in Portland.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you're saying, well, yeah, we'll do that. Why Damian Lillard over Donovan Mitchell? Because I think I could make a pretty compelling argument that Donovan Mitchell's a better player than Damian Lillard. I think I could make that. He's got the clutch gene. He can shoot the three. He's aggressive to the basket. He's a good rebounder. He's a good defender, Donovan. Not great, good defender. Why am I going to trade him for Damian Lillard?
Yeah.
I already have that. I'm not doing that. Now, do they want Rudy Gobert? No, I don't think they do. So then you just have to ask yourself, what do you got to offer? Well, we'll do a 17-team deal where we wind up with 41 first-round picks and Damian Lillard. I mean, I'm telling you, it would have to take some unbelievable trade for the Portland Trailblazers to move Damian Lillard in the first place. By the way, I would remind you, the other team that Damian Lillard wants to play for is the LA Lakers, who have all kinds of talent, who have draft picks, who have, like, the Lakers can make a trade.
Yeah.
The Lakers are not paying the luxury tax. You realize that. One. Two, they have guys that you could work into a 3-team deal. The Jazz don't have draft picks to send out. They don't have money to send out. And they don't have desirable talent to send out. right? I mean, look, Bojan Bogdanovic, Jordan Clarkson, like, if you're going to go and get a guy like Damian Lillard, you're going to have to give up significant money. Because, by the way, isn't Dame on a max deal too? He's making in the 40s, I think.
I believe so.
You know,
or
like
high 30s.
I'm telling you right now, I would love to have Damian Lillard in Utah. It's not happening. It is just so unbelievably difficult to do that. Damian Lillard's making $39.3 million
Yeah.
coming up this season. How are you going to fit that under your cap?
You're not.
I just don't see how that happens. C.J. McCollum, the same thing. I hear that all the time. Well, they'll go and get C.J. McCollum. He's making $31 million. For who? Because Bojan's deal ain't getting that done. That's 2-3 players now, right? Like, how are you going to make that money match up? I mean, I'm not trying to be a Stevie Downer or a Kevin Downer or a Daniel Downer. I couldn't come up with a different word other than Downer.
Okay.
But anyway, not to harsh your mellow, but it's going to be very difficult to do that.
Yeah.
Jeremy Bolton says, whoa, hey, comment dump. How are you?
Dump.
Okay, well, I'm just going to read where I'm at because, I can't find your comment. James Knight says, can we move on from the Mike Conley talk for one day? It gets old. Well, it's very difficult to move on from it because it's what people are waiting for.
What would you like us to talk about? What is it with the Jazz you'd like us to talk about?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm being serious. I ain't even being snarky about it. I mean, you think that do you think that we enjoy talking about an injury-prone player who's way overpaid and has never done a damn thing for this team
and killed your draft assets
and took you out of the postseason? You think we enjoy talking about him every single day? No, we don't. We don't. But what are we left with?
Casey Vincenzo says, man, I hate the boat anchor of a contract for Rudy. Red Hart Norvis says, I have a great idea. Sign and trade Conley, then trade with Ben Simmons so we don't have a point guard. Give Jingles $18 million since he's the glue guy. Trade Bogey for Chris Stapps. And, this was Dennis Lindsey's plan. Never mind. Exactly right. Exactly right. Yeah.
So what I'm saying, like everybody a lot of the new listeners that we get on the show when they listen to the first episode, the first live stream, inevitably they always end up saying, "Oh, well, you guys just hate the Jazz," and then they start listening to the show consistently, and they're like, "Wow, Jazz can't do a sign and trade." Conley is always hurt.
Wait, water's wet and Mike Conley's injured. That's just a dick thing to say. And then he misses the Clippers series, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you were right about that."
You have to be nice to stupid people.
Right? Be nice to me. I'm stupid. The point is, I'm just telling you now, there is no easy way out of what you're in. You know the easy way out? You lose this year.
Yeah.
That would be, if you really want to be smart, you tear this roster down to Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert, and a couple of other guys. And you go young. You play your Azabukis. I mean, look, Trent Forrest is going to be in the Ring of Honor. Well, why don't we start that now? Right? Play Trent Forrest, and you sell Donovan Mitchell on the plan that we're going to get our financial house in order, and we're going to get aggressive. We're going to spend good money.
Yeah.
And we're going to win a championship inside of 3 years. And Donovan, if we don't do that, we'll trade you. That's what I would do because you are in. If they come back intact, this roster comes back intact.
Mm-hmm.
Should we expect a different result? That's the question you got to ask yourself.
Well, if Mike Conley was healthy.
Well, and if Bogey hadn't broken his wrist. Frank H. says, I think the team that can look at what Phoenix has done this season and rebuild similarly is the Kings. Just look at these teams the last 10 years. They've sucked ass. See, the problem is, well, you ain't wrong.
My fucking ass.
Well, the Kings are interesting because I think the Kings have spent money. I think they've drafted well. They don't develop. They hire guys like Luke Walton. Vlade Divac is your general manager.
Yeah.
You need to go back to the Rick Adelman generation of Sacramento King basketball theology and get on with getting out. Go hire real basketball people. And Vivek Ranadive, the owner of the Sacramento Kings, God bless you. The arena is beautiful. Thank you for that. you just haven't done much else well. I mean, Luke Walton is not a good NBA head coach. He's not.
No.
I mean, we've seen that with the Lakers. We've seen that with, Golden State. That was Steve Kerr's team. I think you have to move on.
You have to not be loyal to guys. Like, damn.
Yeah, and if Sacramento really was serious about winning, they'd trade Buddy Hield.
Yeah.
You have to. Yeah, I don't disagree with you. Frank.
I think it's impossible. I legit think it's impossible for some people to look at the team and say, yeah, this is a hard decision that we have to make, but we're going to have to go ahead and make it to get to where we want to get to. So like with the Jazz, it's like, all right, yeah, we got to let Mike walk. We probably need to move the Bogey contract, maybe even the Royce contract.
Yeah.
And we need to be a 5 or a 6 seed instead of a 1 or a 2 seed.
Justin Salas says, yeah, but the Lakers and all of these other super teams are getting players to take less money to come win a championship. I don't know if you've looked at Anthony Davis and LeBron James. They're not taking a whole lot of less money. I think if you look at guys like maybe Kentavious Caldwell-Pope gave some money back, but he's a role player.
Schroeder had to earn his deal this year.
Yeah, and by the way, Dennis Schroeder turned down a huge extension, and thank God he did if you're a Laker fan, because he was terrible down the stretch, and I actually don't think they'll re-sign him. I think that's why there's so much talk about Mike Conley going to the Lakers, because the Lakers will have some cap space, and that's a team that will be – I think they're going to trade Kyle Kuzma. I think they're going to probably renounce Montrezl Harrell.
Yeah.
And, or trade him, because I think that's a player option, rather, excuse me. They have flexibility. They can move pieces, right? You don't sign, and this is why you sign guys to 2-year non-guaranteed deals.
Yeah.
There's a lot of value in that towards the bottom of your roster. The Jazz don't have the luxury, so they have to overpay to get players to Utah. Some of that's true. I agree with that.
With top-end players, I think that's true.
I think that's true.
But I think when you look at guys like, again, the example we always go to is like Austin Rivers. Austin Rivers was available. I have some doubts about the fact that they actually called him. I can't confidently say that Dennis Lindsey actually called Austin Rivers' rep and was like, hey.
Well, because philosophically, he wanted Trent Forrest to play.
Yeah.
He wanted Quinn Snyder to play Trent Forrest heavy minutes. And part of the rub between Dennis Lindsey and Quinn Snyder is Quinn Snyder wanted veterans.
Yeah.
And Dennis Lindsey wanted him to play these young guys. And that's just not how you win championships. Outside of Terrence Mann, who's the young guy that's really, playing huge minutes on either the Suns or the Clippers or the Bucks or the...
Would you consider a guy like, Mikal Bridges to be a young guy? Because he's kind of been through that time as a Sun where he played all those minutes and was bad,
Yeah, he's been through it.
Yeah.
Trent Forrest is a young guy,
hasn't really had that, I played a lot of minutes.
No meaningful minutes.
Yeah.
No meaningful minutes. Just not. And I think that's the hard part when you're saying out loud that you're a championship team, but we're going to play Trent Forrest. It's hard to say those two things out loud and not be laughed at.
Yeah.
You didn't build depth. That's your biggest issue. Justin Salas also says, I don't even want Dame. We don't need another number one. We need a good number two and then go get good talent around them. Yes.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I think that, again, not to rip Rudy, but that's the issue with his contract. That's where it kind of limits you a little bit, because if you were only paying him like $20 a year, then you'd have a lot more options even in this situation.
You'd be re-signing Mike Conley comfortably.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's just the facts of the matter. Casey Finlandson, good morning, says, have faith in Ryan Smith's decision-making. He passed up a $500 million offer for his business and later sold the company for $8 billion.
Yeah.
Truth. Jose Luis BG says, as hurtful as a fan as it will be, the trade assets might be Boyan, Ingles, and Royce. Maybe some rookies to get wings that can shoot and defend, but seems hard to come up with a trade. It is hard to come up with a trade right now.
Yeah.
There's going to be some pain. The pain train's here. Get on board. Jeremy Bolton says, I'd love to see Paul George on the Jazz. It's exactly what they need. They need a player of that ilk. Absolutely they do. Look at how far the Hawks went with younger athletic players. I agree, let's keep a small core and shoot for 6th seed this year. That's what I think you have to do.
What did the Hawks do that the Jazz, in my opinion, are still kind of working on? The Hawks legit took a guy like John Collins, who is not a 7-footer. He can jump out of the gym. He's super athletic.
Can shoot the three.
Can shoot the three, exactly. They took him from young guy and turned him into, hey, you're going to play center for us, and you're going to cause problems. And you need to understand that you're undersized, so let's not go and get a bunch of stupid fouls. And what did that do? That opened up Trae Young. That opened up a bunch of other guys on the squad. Like, that did wonders for their team. And that truly is the other side of this conversation. Like, even if, let's say that they did let Mike go, and they made all these moves, you know, and they brought in some younger players who needed some development. Do we think that this organization right here today can develop players? Because I think that's going to be crucial to their road to where they want to go. You have to get, you know, meaningful minutes out of these guys that you get back out of these transactions. Like, that has to happen. And they traditionally haven't been that. But the other side of it is like, hey, you have a new owner. You're kind of in a new time now. So what is this organization capable of? I think that's a really serious thing that we have to kind of track and monitor as we move through this.